Billions of birds die every single year in North America alone. Billions. And yet, when was the last time you actually found one? Think about that for a moment. You see birds every day. They visit your feeders, sing from your trees, hop across your lawn. They are everywhere, and they are constantly dying from predators, disease, starvation, accidents, and old age. The math should be simple. More deaths should mean more bodies, and yet, almost nothing. Just an empty yard, and the sound of wings you can't explain. This is one of nature's most quietly stunning mysteries. And today, on the Backyard Oracle, we are going to solve it, completely. But I have to warn you, some of what you're about to hear is going to genuinely surprise you, especially what we reveal near the end, because it changes the way you'll think about every bird that visits your yard from this day forward. So stay with me until the very last minute, because the final piece of this puzzle is the one most people never hear. And if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the Backyard Oracle is where backyard birdwatchers come to learn things that most people simply never discover. Now, let's begin. The scale of the mystery. Here's the number that stops people cold. Estimates suggest that somewhere between 2.6 billion and 3.7 billion birds die in North America every single year. That's not a global figure. That's just North America. Factor in the entire planet, and we're talking about hundreds of billions of bird deaths annually. Collisions with windows, towers, and vehicles alone account for hundreds of millions of deaths per year in the United States. So if you do the simple math, if even a fraction of those birds died in visible places and stayed visible for even a few hours, dead birds would be as common a sight as fallen leaves. You would step over them. You would find them on your porch, your driveway, your garden path. They would be everywhere. And yet your yard is almost always empty of them. That's not a coincidence. That's a system, ancient, elegant, and almost perfectly invisible to human eyes. Reason number 1. Birds hide to die. This is where the story begins to get remarkable. When a bird becomes sick or seriously injured, something deeply instinctive takes over. It doesn't stay in the open. It doesn't rest on a visible branch or sit near the feeder where you might notice something is wrong. Instead, it retreats. It pulls itself into the densest cover it can find. Thick shrubs, tall grass, tangled brush, hollow logs, spaces beneath layers of leaves where daylight barely reaches. Birds do this not because they understand death is coming. They do it because stillness and concealment are survival strategies that have been hardwired into them for millions of years. A sick bird that stays in the open becomes an easy meal. So even in their final hours, birds obey the same instinct that kept their ancestors alive. Hide, stay still, stay silent. The result is that most birds die in places you would never think to look. Places that are technically right there in your yard, beneath the thick hedge along your fence, deep inside the ornamental grass by your porch, tucked into the brush pile at the edge of your garden. And you walk past them without ever knowing. Think about how many hiding places exist in an average yard, under a deck, inside a dense shrub, at the base of a tree where roots rise and create small sheltered hollows. Every one of those spots is a place where a bird could spend its final hours completely invisible to you. This first explanation already accounts for a significant portion of the mystery, but it only begins to explain it. Because even when a bird does manage to die somewhere slightly more exposed, somewhere a careful observer might eventually notice, something else removes the evidence almost immediately. And that something is not what most people expect. Stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to talk about how a small bird can vanish from your yard completely in under 20 minutes. Reason number 2, nature's cleanup crew. Most people, when they think about decomposition, imagine a slow process, something that takes days or weeks. And for larger animals, that's often true. But birds are small, remarkably small. And in nature, small means something very specific. It means fast. The moment a bird dies and its body heat begins to fade, a signal goes out into the surrounding environment that is invisible to us but unmistakable to the natural world. Insects detect it first. Flies can locate a small carcass within minutes, beginning the process almost immediately. But insects are just the beginning. Cats, both domestic and feral, are extraordinarily efficient hunters and scavengers. Raccoons move through yards mostly at night, and their sense of smell is sharp enough to locate a small body hidden beneath leaves or tucked at the base of a bush. Foxes, opossums, crows, ravens, jays, and even squirrels will consume a small bird carcass quickly and completely. Research has demonstrated that under the right conditions, warm weather, active scavenger populations, and exposed location, a small songbird carcass can be entirely removed within 15 to 30 minutes, not hours, minutes. By the time you walk back through your yard after your morning coffee, the evidence may already be gone. This is not unusual. This is the normal, efficient operation of the ecological recycling system that has existed for as long as birds and scavengers have shared the same landscape. Every small death becomes immediate nutrition for something else. Nothing is wasted. Nothing lingers. Reason number 3. Darkness does the work. There's another dimension to this mystery that most people overlook entirely, and it's one of the simplest explanations of all. Many birds die at night. Migratory birds, exhausted from long flights, fail in the darkness. Small birds roosting in cold weather succumb to overnight temperature drops when their body reserves run out. Sick birds that retreated to cover during the day often pass quietly in the hours before sunrise. And nighttime belongs to scavengers. Raccoons, opossums, foxes, owls, and a long list of other nocturnal animals are actively moving through your neighborhood in the dark hours, and their senses are precisely tuned for exactly this kind of opportunity. A small bird that dies at 2 in the morning may be found, consumed, and gone before the first gray light of dawn. You wake up, you look out at your yard, and there is nothing there to find, because there never was by the time your eyes were open. This means that an enormous number of bird deaths effectively occur in a window of time that humans simply don't observe. The death happens, the scavenging happens, and the yard looks exactly the same as it always does. Reason number 4. Predators leave almost nothing. When a hawk strikes, or an owl hits its target, or a cat makes a successful catch, the result is often immediate and total. Hawks and falcons, especially, are not messy hunters. They consume their prey efficiently, and what they don't consume immediately, they return to later. An owl can swallow a small songbird whole. A cat will carry its catch to a secluded spot. The predator itself becomes the recycling system, and the only evidence it leaves behind is a small scatter of feathers, which the wind and weather erase within a day or two. Even those feathers, when you find them, tell a story most people don't fully interpret. A loose cluster of feathers on a lawn isn't a mystery. It's a record of an encounter that was over in seconds. So consider what it actually takes to find a dead bird with your own eyes. The bird must have died in a relatively open location. It must have died during daylight hours, or early enough that nighttime scavengers didn't reach it first. You must have walked past that exact spot before insects, mammals, or other birds had time to act. And you must have actually looked closely enough to notice something small and still tucked against the ground. That's an extraordinarily narrow set of conditions. In the next part, we reach the deepest layer of this mystery, and it involves something that will genuinely change how you look at the birds in your yard. The probability is almost zero, by design. Let's put it plainly. For you to find a dead bird, a nearly impossible chain of events has to align. The bird must die in the open. It must do so during hours when you are awake and present. Scavengers must not reach it first, which, as we've seen, they almost always do. And you must look at the right spot at the right time. When you add all of those conditions together, the probability of a single person witnessing a bird's death or discovering its body before the evidence vanishes is remarkably close to zero. Not because birds aren't dying, they are dying constantly, all around you, but because every part of the natural system conspires to make those deaths invisible. Your yard is not a peaceful, death-free space. It is an active ecological system where life and death are happening simultaneously, quietly, and just beyond the edge of your awareness. That realization alone is striking. But now comes the part I promised you. The part that goes deeper than instinct and scavengers and probability. The scientific twist. Do birds understand death? In recent decades, researchers have turned their attention to a question that once seemed almost too philosophical to study. Do birds recognize death in others of their kind? What has emerged from that research is astonishing. Studies focused on crows have documented a consistent and striking behavior. When a crow dies, other crows gather. They do not scatter or ignore it. They converge, sometimes in large numbers, and they vocalize loudly. The gathering can last several minutes before the group eventually disperses. And here is the detail that makes scientists take notice. Crows that witness these gatherings subsequently avoid the location where the death occurred. They alter their behavior based on what they experienced. They remember. Researchers believe these gatherings serve a practical function. The living crows are studying the scene, trying to assess what threat was present, what caused the death, and how to avoid the same fate. The behavior is not mourning in the human emotional sense, but it is something. It is awareness. It is a response to death that shapes future behavior in a measurable way. And crows are not alone in this. Magpies, closely related to crows and equally intelligent, have been observed placing grass or small objects near the bodies of dead companions before moving away. It is a behavior that has no clear survival explanation. Researchers who have witnessed it describe it carefully, unwilling to project human emotions onto animals, and yet unable to fully explain it through pure biological utility either. Western scrub jays, when they encounter a dead jay, call out in a pattern that attracts other jays to the site. Those birds then gather quietly before departing. For a period following the encounter, the jays in that area reduce their foraging calls, the noises that might attract predators, as if they've registered that something dangerous was nearby. These are not simple creatures acting on pure reflex. These are animals with social awareness, with memory, and with something that at least resembles a recognition of what death means to their community. Here is what I want you to carry with you from today. Birds have been dying in your yard, around your feeders, beneath your trees, inside your hedges, for as long as you've lived there. Probably every single season, and you've almost never seen it, not because it wasn't happening, but because the natural world has built a system so efficient, so ancient, and so complete that the evidence is erased almost before it fully exists. The birds that visit you are not exempt from this. They are part of it. And in their own quiet way, hiding when they weaken, disappearing into cover, they participate in the same system their ancestors have followed for millions of years. That's not a sad thought. It's an honest one. And somehow, understanding it makes every bird at your feeder feel just a little more precious. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found a dead bird in your yard or somewhere unexpected? What species was it, and where did you find it? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read every one. And if today's video gave you something to think about, please subscribe to the Backyard Oracle. There are more mysteries like this one waiting for you, quiet, hidden, and just outside your window.